What's going on, guys? It's Jake back in for another YouTube video. Today we're going to be talking about exactly how much it costs to build your Subaru, more specifically my Subaru 2005 Forester XT, and turn it into a basically closest thing to a Jdm Sti Forester as possible. So that's going to be what we're going over. Huge shout out to everybody who voted on my Instagram at Subi_Jake3. I put a little poll on my story that basically asked you guys what you wanted to see, kind of more future plans for the red car, or this video that we're doing today where we kind of go over the whole build spec list, everything, how much it all costs. Now keep in mind, everything on this list is completely MSRP pricing as far as I know. I screenshotted everything so we can add everything up, but if you guys want to know more about the car before we kind of go into everything, because I'm not going to really cover too much of what's been done to it, I'll just go over the things that are on the car and kind of the price and get right through to it. So if you guys want to see more about it, then I'll put the link in the description where I kind of went over everything and how the car got to where it is today. So I'll put that right here, also link in the description, but let's get right into it. So the car originally cost $3,000. I bought this car used off of a lady in Georgia that thought it had a bad turbo, in which it did. It had a lot worse than a bad turbo. Blown head gaskets. Turbo was failing, seals in there weren't any good, but anyway, car was $3,000. The JDM front end, I picked it up from used JDM engine in Baltimore. That is $1,200, so that brings us to $4,200. So next we have the full JDM transmission swap. We're talking axles, hubs, Brembos, the steering wheel, the seats, a whole bunch of other goodies, the cluster, pretty much anything that came off the car, he gave it to me, and that was $5,200. So that takes us up to $9,400. Now we're gonna get into the engine. So I got an IAG Stage 2 short block. That's right around $3,399. We have the APR head studs, which are $225.39. Then we have the OEM cylinder heads that I got refreshed from IAG. I put this on the list, but some of you guys won't necessarily need to do this. So my heads had been contaminated since my engine spun a bearing as well as the head gasket failure. So they needed to be cleaned, refreshed, resurfaced. That all got done. We're gonna put that as $1,000 on here. We have our ASIN water pump and timing belt kit. That was $229.99. Next we have our OEM Subaru gasket kit. So a lot of times this is recommended, but this is another kind of optional part if you guys are building your engine before it blew up, basically. So that was $256.95. Next we have our TGV deletes. Now I didn't get aftermarket TGV deletes. I bought these on Facebook, but regularly they go for right around 100 to 150. So in this case, we just put 150. Next we have the phenolic intake spacers. These cost $59.99. Next, we have our Kemso fuel pump, 340 liters per hour. That's $29.98. Next, we have our ID 1300 top feed injectors. So these retail for right around $900. Next, we have our Cosworth fuel rails. These have been discontinued, but I found a set on eBay that were $249.99. Then we have our Aeromotive fuel pressure regulator, $179.26. Then we have our Aeromotive fuel filter, $116.48. Next we have our 6 AM fuel lines. Now I basically assembled all the fuel lines and AM fittings by myself. So there are kits for this, like IAG sells a kit, so you necessarily wouldn't have to do that. But I put on there that it was $100. I had roughly about $100 in parts to get that job done. Now you got your OEM STI oil pan, which is required to clear most equal length headers. You have $102.59. Then we have our Killer Bee oil pickup and windage tray, which is definitely recommended if you plan on building your Subaru. That was $199 for the kit. Then we have our Grimspeed electronic boost controller. So that is $113. Next we have our Perrin lightweight crank pulley, which is $99.90. Next we have our Perrin oil cooler, which I mounted it behind the front mount intercooler. That was $738.90. Next we have the APS 525 intercooler, which also came with the blow-off valve. If you guys are familiar with this intercooler, it was discontinued a long time ago, I believe 2008 or 2009. maybe 2010, I'm not quite sure, but they're very hard to find, and this is the 525 model. I'm not sure what they retailed for, but I'm just gonna put on here how much I paid, which was $900 with all the piping and fittings and all that stuff, and the blow-off valve. Next we have the APS intake, which is also discontinued. I believe this was a 70mm intake, and it was 160 bucks, bought it used. Next we have all of the header up pipe ceramic coated. So I just put that in here just because it's a good idea to definitely get that stuff done just to keep the heat in the engine bay down. So that was 200 bucks. I did have to replace both of the OEM O2 sensors, so that came up to $372.90. Now, the reason why I had to do that was because when I originally took ownership of the car and it had a blown head gasket, it was obviously burning coolant. So coolant got gummed up in those things, had to replace them. So some of you guys may have to do the same thing, thinking about that. Next we have the ETS header, which this one was actually not a brand name ETS header. It was a custom made one to kind of look like the ETS header. So it was basically the same thing. So I just put the price of the ATS one on there, which is $1,185. Next we have the Grimspeed up pipe with the 38mm tile external wastegate, and that came out to about $638.85. Next we have the Force Performance black turbo, and I bought it with the inlet, so we're just gonna put the price of the turbo on here, and that was $1,325. Steel braided oil line. This is definitely a good idea if you guys plan to go on to a bigger aftermarket turbo. That's $89.99. Now we have the NVIDIA callus downpipe, that's $276.72. Next we have the Turbo XS mid pipe, which I had to use because of the catback that I'm about to talk about, and that was $193.43. So the catback is a Kakimoto Regu .06 catback. I believe that's how you say all those things, but I'm not quite sure. I just love the JDM look of the burnt tip and rolled edge. So that is $511, but I did not calculate the shipping or anything, and I'm pretty sure a brand new one with shipping was like over $700. So I'm just gonna put $511. Next we have our IAG air oil separator, that's $399. Next we have our NGK one-step colder spark plugs, which are $44.80. Next we have our Dom's Tuning cylinder 4 cooling modification, that's $79. Next we have our Mishimoto radiator, and I also included the hoses in here. That's $431.90. Next we can talk about the street raised pitch stop mount that I used, which was $41.95. Next we got the access port, which you're pretty much gonna need one of these unless you get an open source tune, which isn't always recommended. That's $675. Next we have the rear hatch, which I also picked up from JDM Engine, used JDM Engine in Baltimore, and I think it was right around $450. This was a while ago. So next we have the headlights, which were custom retrofitted, and they cost right around $700. Next we have the clutch kit, so it's an ACT SB10 clutch kit. That was $615.21. Next we have a brand new OEM Subaru flywheel, just because the one that I got from the importer just did not look good enough. I didn't trust it. Had some wear, so I bought a new one, $309.55. After that, Cartboy short throw shifter was $155. Next we have our Raceland coilovers, which were $499. I think this might be the last thing. We have the wheels and tires, which were right around $800 because I bought the stuff used. So a lot of the stuff on the list I bought used. So I could be forgetting some stuff, but I honestly don't feel that terrible about it, just because a lot of things I put on the list, I didn't actually pay that price. That's just what you would pay if you went all for retail MSRP. And also, like, a couple of the things that come out of the car, like the automatic transmission and all that stuff, I got some money back out of. So I don't feel like I did too bad considering the power made right around 470 wheel horsepower for any of you guys that didn't check out the other video. But yeah, it's definitely pretty quick, and you'd be hard pressed to go buy a car off the lot that made 470 wheel horsepower for less than 30 grand. So I'm pretty happy about that. But of course, this isn't a brand new car, but it means a lot to me just because of everything that has been done to it. And I have personally actually done a lot of the stuff to it. So definitely has been a huge task. It's definitely worth it. I think that there's a lot worse things I could spend my money on. So our grand total was $27,419.82. It is currently the next day. This video took a lot longer than I expected. So if you guys did like this video, make sure you drop a like, hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back for that red car video with future plans.